This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. We also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 13th of January 2021, and I am Miss K.
I'm Doom.
And I am JM. In case you missed the headlines this morning, here they are. In the Daily Nation, fresh threat to push RUTO out. Yes. In the Standard, now Mudavadi goes for RUTO. And in the Star, Thuge to nail Rotich in dams scandal. Let's take the Standard and the Daily Nation together.
Yes.
And the story here is that the Amani National Congress Party yesterday launched a fresh onslaught for the impeachment of the Deputy President, accusing him of undermining the head of state whom he's supposed to be assisting. Yeah. So Lugari MP Ayub Savula has called on the DP to resign. Otherwise, they will put together an impeachment motion to get him out of office. Now, the motion is based on the following premise, according to Savula. The Deputy President's ambition, and I'm quoting him here, is in competition with priorities set by the government that he serves in. Yes. He is therefore a danger to the stability of the nation by covertly sabotaging the President's government agenda.
Yes.
And he goes on further to tell us that he does this through incitement of the poor, but he also does it through malicious gossip. There are many times that the Deputy President has propelled rumors that the President doesn't work, the President is lazy, the President imbibes too much in alcohol and gets carried away, and so on and so forth. Those are accusations and rumors that he's peddled to his favor.
Yes.
So that's the long and short of that. 2M, do you want to pick up from there?
Absolutely. The problem with William Ruto is he thinks he's a co-president. That's why he has the guts of calling the president Huyu Jamaa. Now, if you're going to put that in numbers, William Ruto brought 1.4 million Kalenjin votes in 2017. Uhuru Kenyatta had about 5 point something, almost 6 million votes in 2017. Who's a joyrider there? But that's not where I'm going. You see, what William Ruto is most scared about is a coalition of the biggies: Musalia Mudavadi, Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga, and Kalonzo Musyoka. Let's have a hypothetical position here. The lawyers in total voter register with regard to 2017 is 2.6 million registered voters. That's the second biggest voting bloc. The Luo nation is about 2.3 million registered voters. That's about 5 million. Now, if Ruto takes away half of Gema, which is about 5.6 million voters, the coalition of the biggies will take 2.8 million votes. Let's assume the Kambas are also divided by half. The Kambas' total registered voters is about 2.1 million registered voters. So let's give them 1 million. It says this: whoever is the presidential candidate, either Raila Odinga or Musalia Mudavadi, will go home early as a presidential winner with 8.6 million registered voters. Right? Now, with everything kept constant, with regard to 2017, that will be about 60% of the total vote.
Well over 50% plus one.
That's well over 50% plus one. Now, William Ruto, in essence, is finito. He's kalas, he's finished, right? And that is why he's so scared of the tribal narrative, the 40 versus 2 narrative.
Yes.
He knows if that is the narrative that carries the day, he will be back in Sugoi before he knows it.
As a leader of opposition.
Yes.
Well, yes. So that's, I think that's also the story being spoken about in the Daily Nation.
Yes.
We've got a 3-part criteria that we use to assess the headlines. Are they topical or speculative, repetitive or groundbreaking, and finally thoughtful or just plain lazy? I would say we toss the Daily Nation, but we do consider the Star.
Yes.
And so we'll put that in the parking bay as we discuss the Star. Sorry, I meant Standard. We should discuss the Star.
Yes.
Thuge to nail Rotich in dam scandal.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what this story is actually telling us is the Director of Public Prosecution, Haji, believes that Treasury PS Kamau Thuge will help him to nail his ex-boss, Rotich. He has struck a plea bargain and a deal in which they will no longer have charges against them. That is both Thuge and another PS, Wildlife Principal Secretary Susan Koech, who will testify against Rotich and have their charges dropped. And they believe that if they had arrested over 20 people for the involvement in the Aurora and Kimorel Dam scandal that we all were well aware of, but because they did not have any high-profile witnesses, they thought that the case would collapse. In fact, on Tuesday, Assistant DPP Alexander Muteti informed the Chief Magistrate, Douglas Ogoti, that the state was no longer interested in prosecuting Thuge and Koech, as they were now state witnesses, and he asked the court to withdraw the charges facing the two former PSs. I think that all roads lead to the DP for this reason. If you can do a plea bargain with Thuge and Koech, in which they will testify against Rotich, then you can also do a plea bargain with Rotich in which you will testify against an even bigger fish who occupies a very high position. And I think that all those roads then lead to one doorstep, and that doorstep is called impeachment. Now, if we don't get you for not being a valid member of a political party, we will get you for having committed or being involved in a crime.
Yes, absolutely. This is classic prisoner's dilemma, isn't it, Mrs. K?
I agree.
One question. If Thuge and I think the name is what, Susan Koech?
Yes, Susan Koech.
If they have agreed to become witnesses, what it means is that they have already adduced evidence to the DPP that is enough to make them state witnesses. Is that correct? So this is not on a promissory level. This is they have already adduced evidence. If at all they have adduced evidence, then it means that it's up to Rotich, and there could be a second prisoner's dilemma between Rotich and you know who else. Now, Rotich, because he doesn't want to go in, he might just also as well say, I can become state witness in the potential prosecution of person X and X.
Yes, the deputy president. Somehow. So, whom do we award winning headline?
Can you go for two? Standard and Star?
Yes,
I agree.
I concur. So the Standard and the Star give us our winning headlines. And onto the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. We've got a three-part criteria that we use to assess them. Are they humorous or dry, satirical or pessimistic, and finally effective or just plain lazy?
Yes.
In the Daily Nation, what do we have?
In the Daily Nation, you have President of Uganda, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, still on his seat, and next to him...
Is he on the seat or is he the seat?
He's actually the seat of Uganda, and he's holding a spiked rungu, a club that has replaced the letter U in Uganda. I think this is in context of tomorrow's presidential election happening in Uganda, and main rivals is Kaguta Museveni and Bobi Wine.
Just toss that one.
Very far.
Toss that one.
It's the nation, eh?
Yes. Let's consider the Standard. Now, today's cartoon consists of two frames, as you can see. In the top frame is a portrayal of social media platforms. You've got WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and they've got their hands out, telling Trump that he's banned. In fact, some of them are even cursing at Trump, and they're saying here also that you are suspended from using the platforms. And in the bottom frame, by contrast, is the same platforms, but this time round it's Museveni who's got his hand out, and he's telling them, you are suspended and banned. So there's a sharp contrast there between the two leaders. It's a good one.
I love it.
I love it too. I love it. So we put that in the parking bay as we look at the Star.
In the Star, I'd like to take a jab at the Cramp twins, if I could call them that. Ozone versus Ndula. Ndula did a similar cartoon yesterday, and today we have another war, a bout, as it was called yesterday. On one side of the ring, we have a caricature of President Uhuru Kenyatta, and his boxing gloves are a caricature of Raila Odinga and a caricature of Musalia Mudavadi. And the one is saying, impeach, resign, and the other, taka taka. And we have the president saying, meow, grrr. On the other side...
I actually kind of like the play on the words here. On the other side.
Yeah, taka taka instead of tanga tanga. I do like it. On the other side, we have a caricature of Deputy President William RUTO, and he's in a no-gloves, bare-knuckle, all-out war against the president. I don't know whether that bare knuckles is that the fight is unfair or that he has a significant advantage.
Yeah, I think the Deputy President thinks that he's got the upper footing by fighting bare knuckles.
Yeah.
It's quite bold of him, but I think also foolhardy.
Absolutely.
As I was saying yesterday, he doesn't know what he's up against. The entire political establishment, the entire system, that is a huge weight to to bear without any solid allies on his side.
Couldn't agree more.
And the reference here to Takataka actually is a very good one that Raila made.
Yes.
He over the weekend at Mama Davidi's funeral, he said, that William Ruto's calling them dynasties. That is complete Takataka. I loved it. Brilliant execution, delivery on his part.
Yeah, absolutely.
So who should we give winning cartoon?
I do like Gado.
Yes, so do I. So Gado gives us our winning cartoon. And now, on to our final thought. But before we get there, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So what is our final thought?
Now, our final thought, it is inspired by a book entitled We Need New Stories, Challenging the Toxic Myths Behind Our Age of Discontent by Nesreen Malik.
Yes, this week we are looking at a single book, and the book examines 6 myths that have contributed to our age of discontent. On Monday, we looked at the myth of political correctness. Yesterday, we looked at the myth of the reliable narrator, and today we look at chapter 5, the myth of virtuous origin. And the book begins by saying that there is no account, a mainstream account of history of a country that is not a collective delusion. The present cannot be celebrating without editing the past. In fact, she says that as we edit our national historical accounts, we also must edit our national heroes. Everything from their human rights records to their prejudices to their imperfections is cleansed. She says that an assassinated Egyptian president is remembered as being a pious Muslim, even though he had poured himself a stiff glass of Scotch whiskey after every evening prayer. Barack Obama is also not excluded from this, and she says that he was remembered as a healthy basketball playing president, even though he was reportedly a chain smoker. And this myth of history, that is the myth of virtuous origin, and she looks at it by saying that, and I quote, "The whitewashing of the history of colonialism and slavery is integral to the belief that there is something inherently noble about ex-colonial Europe and the US. The myth of virtuous origin is the strongest, most corrosive myth that lies at the heart of our culture's failure to self-reflect." And she says that there's a straight line that goes from this belief and another. That is that there's an essential moral superiority about the white race that has managed to create material wealth by virtue of its own enterprise rather than leveraging of the poor people both in their home countries and in those imported against their will. She says that the truth of the Anglo-American history and Western Europe history is founded on both the cultification of whiteness in order to instill a sense of superior national identity and the pursuit of conflict abroad that confers a sense of purpose at home. What she says, she analyzes this myth of virtuous origin by looking or retelling the history of 2 things, the Brexit campaign and the Make America Great campaigns. Because in the crafting and execution of these 2 campaigns, the fears and insecurities and lies of the propagators are whitewashed. The myths of the greatness of slave master America are cleaned up, as well as the glamorization of colonialism and the great British Empire are told to us, the foolish, unsuspecting, wishful thinking masses.
Love it.
There.
Absolutely love it.
My own central thesis of this chapter is how ideology can distort history and how the present can be manipulated to correct history. Now, she says that the past is rewritten in broad brush strokes, but the present is also revised in small amendments or omissions. An example she gives is the British Empire. She states, "For an empire which lasted half a millennium, administered millions of citizens and resulted in large movements of people and resources around the globe, to be edited in such a simplistic way can only be done to ideology." And this is subtle and dangerous, and these are subtle and dangerous reverberations. Curating the history of colonialism and civilizing mission that ended peacefully, rather than one primarily rooted in financial motive and sustained by a codified racist hierarchy of exploitation, results in holes in the common consciousness of a nation. You see, the British government has enabled a cleaned up narrative of its colonial past through school curriculums, a brilliant PR campaign that have airbrushed its history. And who can blame them? If you sat at the helm of the British Empire, would you want the stories of torture, land grab, killings, extraction told to future generations? But that's not where I'm going. By the end of last year, Kenyans forgot that there was a fake arms scandal allegedly engineered deep at the Deputy President William Ruto's office. Kenyans forgot that a young cop who worked at Ruto's office was found murdered a day before he wrote a statement regarding what he knew about the arms. Just a few weeks ago, a 51-year-old cop allegedly committed suicide just because of losing a camera belonging to Ruto's office. And yet, no one asks why William Ruto is the only vice president since Kenya's independence who's had people around him die just like that. On the flip, he's seen as a hustler's messiah. Ruto has cast himself as a man who will change fortunes of the wretched and bring about socioeconomic equality to Kenya. And the stupid masses have swallowed this narrative whole. These are the dangers of ideology. It distorts reality. Joseph Goebbels once said, propaganda works best when those who are being manipulated are confident they are working on their own free will. Read Kema.
Now, I would like to talk about this phenomenon and even extend to talk about the British Empire from where you left off to this phenomenon of conjuncture history in the context of the history of globalization and economic order. Now, no one captures this myth of virtuous origin better than Professor Ha-Joon Chang in his book Bad Samaritans, The Myth of Free Trade and the Secret History of Capitalism. In chapter 1 of his book, Professor Chang contrasts what he calls the official history of globalization and the real history of globalization. Now, the official history that the Wazungu economists from the World Bank tell us when they come to see Oko Yatani at the National Treasury is as follows, that the path to prosperity for us as a country is through applying the principles of free trade, of having a balanced budget, of having limited government, of having private enterprise, and wholehearted friendliness towards foreign investment. But that is not how they became rich. And they often cite the example of Britain. In fact, they usually tell Oko Yatani, you know, Britain being the chief architect of the first wave of globalization, you know, it got there through free trade. But that's a lie.
Absolutely.
The true history is best illustrated through the example of Hong Kong. On the 30th of June 1997, Hong Kong was officially handed back to China by its last British governor, Christopher Patten. Now, many British journalists worried about the fate of Hong Kong's democracy under the Chinese Communist Party. But no one seems to remember how Hong Kong came to be a British possession in the first place. Hong Kong became a British colony after the Treaty of Nanking in 1842, which had been the result of the Opium War. The growing British taste for tea had created a huge trade deficit within China. And in a desperate attempt to plug this gap, this budget deficit, Britain started exporting opium produced in India to China. The mere detail that selling opium was illegal in China could not possibly be allowed to obstruct the noble cause of balancing the books of Britain. And so when a Chinese official seized an illicit cargo of opium in 1841, the British government used it as an excuse to fix the problem once and for all by declaring war. China was obviously heavily defeated in the war and forced to sign that treaty, the Treaty of Nanking, which made China lease Hong Kong to Britain and give up its right to set its own tariffs and to set its own economic agenda. So Britain declared war on China because of getting in the way of illegal trade in narcotics. So ladies and gentlemen, here we have the truth. The free movement of goods, of people and money that developed under Britain's first wave of globalization during the period 1870 to 1913 was made possible not by free trade practices, not by market forces, no.
Yes.
But they succeeded at globalization through military might, through colonial rule and unequal treaties.
Absolutely.
You know, and what's my point here?
Yeah.
Armed with this truth, we should no longer take their advice wholesale when it comes to planning our economy, but with a healthy dose of contempt, with a pinch of salt.
Yes.
You know, ultimately, pardon?
A bucket of salt.
A bucket of salt, in fact, yes. You know, ultimately, we should be able to chart our own path.
Yes.
If we need to impose tariffs, we should. If we need to manipulate our currency exchange rates so that we lower our debt repayments to China, we should.
Yes.
And so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
We should be liberated, and this is the truth that should liberate us.
You know, JM, and I keep telling people this. By 1919, Britain had their national debt at 200% of GDP. 200%. Between 1915 to 1919, Britain's debt jumped to by about 6.5 billion sterling pounds, about 7.4 billion sterling pounds. That translated to today's forex currency, today's inflation, is about 40 billion sterling pounds, which is actually our national debt.
Yeah.
Now they paid their national debt from the 1815, 1915. The year 2015. It took them 200 years to pay it. So what's wrong with that? And in fact, by the time when the Brits came in the 1890s with the Indian labor to build our railway, show me one Giriyama, one Kamba, one Kikuyu, one Luya, all the way until Uganda, who was compensated for their land. They took land, they appropriated a piece of land, built an entire railway, and then sold it to the British government. Now, what moral authority do they have to come and tell us to stop corruption and everything? They're the ones that taught us.
Absolutely, yeah. The myth of virtuous origin, far from it. On that note, would like to end this show. We had a double winning headline from the Standard and the Star, and we had a winning cartoon from the Standard. I'd like to leave us with a bit of a joke.
You don't prime us for a joke.
Something ironic. I know I shouldn't have, actually. It's a West African saying, and it says, "Truth came to market and could not be sold. We buy lies with ready cash." Just to say that, you know, lies will spread faster than truth. Yes, I shouldn't have explained that either. Okay, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel on your TV screens. Find us on Pang, Free to Air, Go TV, and Star Times. Have a good evening.
Yes.